Welcome to our deep dive into the world of measurement systems analysis. You know how we rely on measurements for pretty much everything, from baking a cake to build a skyscraper. Well, MSA is all about making sure those measurements are accurate and reliable. And it's not just about the tools themselves.
Sure.
It's about understanding all the factors, including the human element, that can affect those measurements.
Yeah, it really is a fascinating field. And it's more relevant now than ever before, really. Think about it. We live in a data-driven world. We're constantly making decisions based on numbers. So if those numbers are wrong, well, the consequences can be pretty significant.
Oh, sure. Okay. So let's start with the basics. What exactly does MSA look at, and why should we care?
Okay, so at its core, MSA evaluates things like accuracy, repeatability, reproducibility, and stability. So accuracy is simply how close your measurement is to the true value. Repeatability is about getting the same measurement multiple times in a row when nothing else changes. Reproducibility comes into play when you have different people taking the same measurement. You want to make sure they get consistent results. And stability means ensuring that your measurement system stays accurate over time.
Okay, got it. So it's kind of like checking to make sure your measuring tools aren't wonky.
Right. That's part of it. But MSA goes a lot deeper than just checking the tools. It's about understanding the entire system, from the equipment to the operator to the environment in which the measurement is being taken.
So it's not just a quick check of the toolbox. It's more like a full-blown investigation into the entire measurement process.
Exactly. Because even small variations in any part of the system can add up to big problems down the line.
Yeah, for sure. You know what? This reminds me of something I read in the materials you sent over. It was about a manufacturing unit that was measuring metal pieces, and they were getting inconsistent results. Turns out their measurement system was off, and it was causing major issues in their production process.
Yeah, that's a classic example of how MSA can really save the day in that case. By using MSA, the manufacturer was able to identify the problem and then implement corrective actions. And this led to significant improvements in product quality, reduced waste, and ultimately saved them time and money.
That makes total sense. But let's face it, sometimes statistics can feel a little, dry.
Yeah.
Can you give me an example of how MSA is applied in a way that feels, a little more real world?
Absolutely. Let's look at the electronics industry. Companies like Corning Inc., they use MSA to ensure the precise thickness of films used in microelectronics, things like your smartphone screen, or a high-tech sensor. These films are incredibly thin, and even the slightest variation can affect their performance.
Wow. So getting those measurements right is critical. What's the process they use to achieve that level of accuracy?
They use a statistical tool called Gauge R&R, basically. It's a way to assess how much of the variation in measurements is due to the measurement system itself, and how much is due to actual differences in the parts being measured.
So it's kind of like separating the signal from the noise.
Right.
Figuring out if the variation is real or just a quirk of the measurement process.
You got it. In Corning's case, they actually went a step further and used something called expanded gauge R&R, which allows them to analyze multiple factors and how they interact to impact the measurements.
Okay, so now we're getting into some pretty technical stuff. Could you break down what makes expanded gauge R&R different and why it was so important for a company like Corning?
Sure. With regular gauge R&R, you're usually looking at factors like the operator, the measuring device, and maybe the time of day. But in a complex manufacturing environment, there can be many more variables at play. Expanded gauge R&R allows you to assess these additional factors, like temperature, humidity, or even the specific batch of materials being used. For Corning, understanding how these factors impacted film thickness was crucial to achieving the level of precision they needed.
That makes sense. It's like going from a standard checkup to a full body scan. You're getting a much more detailed picture of what's going on. But with all this emphasis on numbers and statistics, it's easy to forget that there are people involved in every measurement. What about the human element? How does that factor into MSA?
Yeah, that's a really important point, and it's one of the things that makes MSA so interesting. You can have the most sophisticated equipment in the world, but if the person using it isn't properly trained, or if they're making mistakes, your measurements will be off.
So it seems like MSA is as much about people as it is about precision. That makes me wonder, what are some of the common challenges companies face when trying to implement MSA effectively?
Well, one of the biggest hurdles is often resistance to change. People get comfortable with the way they've always done things, even if it's not the most accurate or efficient way. So getting buy-in from employees at all levels is essential.
Yeah, that's a good point. It's like trying to convince someone to switch to a new phone operating system. Even if the new one has all these great features, there's still that learning curve and the fear of the unknown.
Exactly. And just like with a new phone, training is key. You need to make sure everyone understands, not just how to use the new tools and techniques, but also why they're important.
Right. So it's about painting the bigger picture, showing how accurate measurement benefits everyone in the long run.
Precisely. And speaking of training, one of the criticisms of traditional MSA, particularly gauge R&R, is that it can sometimes be oversimplified. People might see it as a box-ticking exercise. Just go through the motions, get the numbers, and move on.
Right. But that's not really getting to the heart of MSA, is it?
Not at all. You really need to understand the principles behind the tools and be able to interpret the results correctly. That's where training and ongoing support come in.
This makes me think about that expert critique you mentioned earlier, Dr. Wheeler's work. Can you tell me a little bit more about his perspective on gauge R&R and what he proposes instead?
Sure. So Dr. Wheeler argues that gauge R&R, while useful, can be limited in its scope. He advocates for a more holistic approach that considers all the factors that can contribute to measurement variation, not just the instrument and the operator, but also things like the environment, the measurement method, and even the materials being measured.
So it's like looking at the entire ecosystem of the measurement process. What kind of practical changes does Dr. Wheeler suggest?
He emphasizes the importance of breaking down the measurement system into its component parts and analyzing each one individually. This can involve things like conducting experiments to see how different environmental factors affect the measurements, or studying the interaction between the operator and the instrument.
It sounds like a much more in-depth analysis, almost like a detective investigation. But wouldn't this more comprehensive approach be quite time-consuming and expensive?
It can be, but the payoff can be huge. By identifying and addressing hidden sources of variation, companies can improve the accuracy and reliability of their measurements significantly, leading to better product quality, less waste, and increased efficiency.
It makes me think of those hidden costs you never consider. Like you said earlier, inaccurate measurements can have a ripple effect throughout the entire production process.
Exactly. And those costs can quickly add up, so investing in a robust MSA program can actually save companies money in the long run.
That makes sense. So, we've talked about the importance of people, the potential pitfalls of oversimplification, and the need for a more holistic approach. But what about the future of MSA? Where do you see this field heading in the next few years?
That's a great question, and it's one that gets me really excited. You know, we're living in an era of incredible technological advancements, and those advancements are starting to revolutionize the field of MSA.
Okay, I have to ask, are we talking robots taking over measurement duties?
Not quite robots. But we are talking about artificial intelligence and machine learning. Imagine a world where your measurement systems are constantly monitoring themselves, using AI algorithms to detect even the slightest shifts in performance.
That sounds like something out of a sci-fi movie. So how would this work in practice? Would the machines be making all the decisions?
It's not about replacing human expertise, it's about augmenting it. AI can analyze vast amounts of data in real time, identifying patterns and anomalies that humans might miss. It can alert operators to potential problems before they even occur, allowing for proactive intervention and preventing costly errors.
That's a game changer. It would be like having a superpowered assistant, constantly checking your work, making sure everything is running smoothly. But wouldn't this require a massive overhaul of existing measurement systems?
It's definitely a big shift, but the technology is advancing rapidly. We're already seeing companies integrate AI into their MSA programs, and I think this trend will only accelerate in the coming years.
So it's not just a futuristic fantasy. It's already happening. What are some of the specific benefits you see AI bringing to the world of MSA?
Well, for one, it can help to address some of the challenges we discussed earlier. For example, AI can assist with the more complex and time-consuming aspects of MSA, like analyzing large data sets or identifying hidden sources of variation. This can free up human experts to focus on more strategic tasks, like process improvement and problem solving.
So it's not just about efficiency, it's about elevating the role of the human expert. Instead of being bogged down by data crunching, they can focus on the bigger picture.
Exactly. AI can also help to improve the accuracy and reliability of measurements by detecting subtle patterns and trends that might be missed by the human eye. It can even predict when equipment is likely to fail, allowing for preventative maintenance and minimizing downtime.
So it's about taking a more proactive and predictive approach to measurement, rather than simply reacting to problems after they occur. That brings me to another question. We've talked a lot about manufacturing, but where else do you see AI-powered MSA making a significant impact?
The possibilities are truly endless. Healthcare is a prime example. Think about the importance of accurate measurements in medical devices. Everything from blood pressure monitors, to insulin pumps, to imaging equipment. AI could play a crucial role in ensuring the reliability of these devices, leading to better patient outcomes, and potentially even saving lives.
It's amazing to think how AI could revolutionize healthcare through more accurate measurements. But before we get too carried away with the future, I'd love to hear more about how MSA is being used today. You mentioned some fascinating case studies in the materials you sent over.
Yeah, there are so many great examples of companies using MSA to solve real-world problems and achieve some really remarkable results.
Can you share a specific case study that really highlights the power of MSA in action?
Absolutely. One that comes to mind involves a manufacturer of automotive components. They were having issues with inconsistent measurements in their brake pad production line. This was leading to variations in brake pad thickness, which could have serious safety implications.
Wow. That sounds like a critical issue to address. How did they use MSA to get to the bottom of the problem?
They started by conducting a thorough gauge R&R study to assess the variability in their measurement system. They involved multiple operators, used different measuring instruments, and took repeated measurements on the same brake pads.
So they were really trying to isolate all the potential sources of variation, from the human element to the equipment itself?
Exactly. And what they found was that a significant portion of the variation was coming from the way the operators were using the calipers to measure the brake pads. There was inconsistency in how they were positioning the calipers and applying pressure.
So it wasn't the calipers themselves that were faulty. It was the human element introducing the variability.
Precisely. This is a common issue in many industries, even with well-calibrated instruments. Inconsistencies in how they are used can lead to significant measurement errors.
So how did they address this issue? Did they invest in new high-tech calipers?
Actually, the solution was much simpler and more cost-effective. They developed a standardized procedure for using the calipers, complete with detailed instructions and visual aids. They then provided comprehensive training to all the operators, emphasizing the importance of following the procedure consistently.
So they focused on improving the human element, rather than simply throwing technology at the problem.
Exactly. And the results were impressive. After implementing the standardized procedure and training, they saw a dramatic reduction in measurement variability. The brake pad thickness became much more consistent, leading to improved product quality and reduced safety risks.
That's a great example of how a relatively simple intervention, focused on the human element, can have a huge impact. It also highlights the importance of clear communication and training in any MSA program.
Absolutely. Another key takeaway from this case study is the iterative nature of MSA. It's not a one-and-done activity. You need to continuously monitor your measurement system and make adjustments as needed.
So it's about creating a culture of continuous improvement when it comes to measurement. Always looking for ways to refine your processes and reduce variability.
Exactly. And that's where those future technologies we talked about earlier, like AI and machine learning, can play a really vital role. By automating some of the data analysis and monitoring tasks, AI can free up human experts to focus on process improvement and problem solving.
It's like having a team of tireless assistants constantly working behind the scenes to ensure your measurements are as accurate and reliable as possible.
Precisely. And as AI technology continues to evolve, we can expect to see even more innovative applications of MSA in the years to come.
Well, this has been a truly eye-opening deep dive into the world of measurement systems analysis. We've covered so much ground, from the foundational principles to the real-world challenges, to the exciting possibilities of the future.
It's been a pleasure sharing my insights with you and our listener. I hope this deep dive has provided some valuable knowledge and perhaps even sparked some new ideas.
Before we wrap up, I want to leave our listener with a final thought. We've talked a lot about the technical aspects of MSA, but at its core, it's really about seeking truth and precision in a world that's often messy and uncertain.
That's a beautiful way to put it. In a world awash in data, the ability to measure accurately and reliably has never been more important. MSA provides us with the tools and the mindset to navigate this complex landscape and make informed decisions based on solid evidence.
So to our listener out there, keep questioning, Keep exploring. And never underestimate the power of a well-calibrated measurement system.
And remember, accurate measurement is not just about numbers. It's about understanding the world around us and making it a better place.